All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Know Who Drives Return from Boardroom Alpha. I'm David Drapkin with Joanna Macris. And today it's great to be joined by Neha Palmer. Neha is currently the CEO of Terawatt Infrastructure, has a long career history that I'm sure we'll touch on. So just first off, Neha, thanks so much for hopping on today to talk to us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. You want to just give a bit of an intro to yourself just to kick things off?
Sure. I'm the CEO of Terawatt Infrastructure. We're a company that's been purpose-built to provide large-scale EV charging for fleets, really focused on large hubs that can serve these types of customers. So really excited to be here today and dig into what we're working on at Terawatt and my background as a leader.
Nice. How about we'll start with, it'd be cool to hear about sort of your time as the head of energy strategy at Google, and sort of if that led it all into the to the inspiration of what's going on over at Terawatt.
Certainly. So I was one of the first employees hired to work on energy for data centers specifically. When I started almost a decade ago at Google, there were 6 data centers in the US, 2 in Europe, and we really were at a point where we started growing pretty rapidly, and they realized that energy was really the cornerstone of developing these data centers. They wanted some in-house expertise. And so we had a lot of fun over the next 9+ years, really building an energy company within Google, doing everything from hard infrastructure, transmission lines, substations, all the way to energy procurement. We've got them to be the first company of that size to be 100% renewable for all of their energy consumption. And what we really did there, which I think is really more impactful beyond just Google, is we seeded a corporate renewable energy movement. Google was one of the first, and the tech cohort came along. But you saw, by the time I moved on from Google, there was really a movement among a lot of corporations to be focused on what type of energy they were buying and really demand from their suppliers clean energy. So that was a really great experience, and really starting from scratch and building that team out from there was really an amazing experience. Learned a lot about infrastructure. My background prior to that has always been energy infrastructure, but I really learned about that nexus of technology and infrastructure. So thinking about, again, these large substations, transmission lines, but how does that then lead into what happens inside the data center and how that's a really important piece of the puzzle for what's required there. So really understanding large infrastructure and how that's built in many different markets really inspired me to think about how we could take that to another area and what it could also mean from an impact from an environmental perspective. And that's what led me to EV charging in Terawatt.
Yeah, a lot of the focus around electrification has been around the consumer side, on consumer cars, right? Terawatt is solving a very different problem. You have a lot of announcements of the big freight logistics companies all electrifying. Talk to us about what kind of challenges that creates for the grid and what you're doing to solve it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you see is that we're following the vehicles. So, the EVs for passengers have been around for years. And they're starting to really take off. I think we had the highest year of EVs bought as a percentage of vehicles bought last year in the passenger market. But what you're seeing now is that the development of these vehicles for freight and other large applications has finally matured to a stage where lots of vehicles are starting to come off the line, and companies are getting their orders of EVs they put in, sometimes 18 months, 24 months ago. And the problem is really different, right? Most passenger EVs are charged in the home. Most people who buy them have a garage, and they're able to do that overnight at home slowly. The needs of fleets are significantly different. You have a concentration of vehicles all in one location, often requiring charging at the same time. You have larger vehicles, which have larger batteries and need higher power levels. So, the simplest level at home, you can plug into your normal wall circuit. You'll charge slowly, but it's possible. You can't do that with a semi-truck. You really do need specialized equipment. And if you layer on all of that complexity of lots of vehicles in one place, the need for the high power levels, time is money in many of these industries. That is their product, is delivering things on time, really leads to a different type of infrastructure required for charging fleets. And that's what we're here to solve.
You've been at the helm just under a year now. Talk to us a little bit about your experience at, running a company and, challenges and your initial insights.
It's been a really fun year. As I look back and think about it, it's really amazing how far we've come as a company. Personally, it's been just a wonderful challenge. It's very different than working in a big corporation. Going from, a year ago, sitting down for the first time and, empty inbox and I'm the only employee to really ramping it up has been a really rewarding experience. I think super exciting industry that we're in has really helped that as well. You mentioned all of these new announcements coming from freight and logistics companies. It's really exciting to see those come every morning in the inbox, right? There's 5 more. And so seeing that momentum build in the industry has been really, really supercharging, pun intended, our company as well in terms of how we want to grow and the opportunity we have in front of us. So it's been a lot of fun. It's certainly been challenging at times too. It's a very intense market for talent right now, and anyone who's building a team can tell you that's a significant factor in the speed at which they can build. So that's been something that we've had to work on. Just working through a pandemic, that's hit every sector in the economy. And no different here, right? Trying to go to office, come back to office, all of these different gyrations we've had over the last year has been interesting. But really, I think what for us has been so significant is the momentum in the industry has really allowed us to continue our trajectory, even with a lot going on.
Yeah. On the kind of high-end commercial level that you're operating at, do you face some of the same supply chain challenges as the consumer EV guys, or is it a whole different set of challenges for you at Terawatt?
Everything is constrained. We were talking this morning about legal capacity. Everything in this market is constrained, and so certainly, timelines have gotten slowed down for everything from intellectual property all the way down to actual goods and services. So certainly, it's been hitting us as well. I think that things are starting to ease up. It seems like you're starting to have more certainty, which is nice. It might be further out than we like, but we are seeing more certainty in the market for supply chain and in every aspect.
Yeah. And as a maturing private company, what are kind of the next milestones for Terawatt, and what are your goals short term?
So our goals are really simple. We are trying to grow as fast as possible to meet the market. I think really it was almost 180 degrees experience from what was going on before the year ended and what we saw at the turn of the year. People are receiving those vehicles, and we now have customers reaching out to us saying, oh, I am now receiving 10 vehicles in January, 50 in June, I'll have 300 by the end of the year. And they're really looking for solutions. So for us, it's really growing to be able to meet those solutions, making sure we have a pipeline of sites, we have a pipeline of developed sites that customers can fly into as they are starting to receive these vehicles and realize it's challenging, right? They might have thought, oh, I had my pilot and that went really well. And then we talked earlier about the challenge of the scale. When you are trying to draw that much power, for a fleet of 50 vehicles is very different than doing the pilot. And so oftentimes retrofitting their current site might not work. It may not work to even go to a new site because that takes a certain amount of development timeline. So we are really trying as hard as we can to meet that customer need that we see coming, that we had, the thesis was that was going to come this time last year, and it has arrived.
Yeah. You're also a director on a SPAC, GoGreen, Premerger. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of technologies you're looking at? Obviously, you have a sustainability focus. Any insight there?
Yeah, obviously, there's a lot of interest in the market for new technologies and people to invest into that. Really, with the focus on ESG, I think individual investors and even institutional investors are really focused on having that in their portfolio. So that's what GoGreen is focused on. The name lends itself to that. There's so much out there right now, and I think we're really at an awesome inflection point in terms of what is interesting and investable in the ESG space. It certainly has matured than what we saw back in the 2007, 8, 9 timeframe. We are at a level of understanding now, I think, especially with energy, which is my area of expertise, that energy means infrastructure. And so really understanding that what you are investing into is at some level there's technology, but there's also a huge amount of capital that needs to be deployed. And I think that the market has matured to understand that. And so we're really excited about all the opportunities that are out there, both from a technology perspective, but also just the scaling aspect of some of these technologies, I think is what is a really interesting opportunity that's going to be coming here in the next 12, 18, 24 months.
Yeah, because I know obviously you're CEO of a private company. We follow like public companies here as well, and it seems that now more than ever, it's been building for a while, but now more than ever, there's really a true institutional focus on certain ESG issues, and you're seeing ESG proposals being raised at annual meetings, and institutional investors really starting to put their money where their mouth is when it comes to having concrete ESG goals, et cetera. What are you seeing from an investor perspective on how important having a true ESG policy or meeting ESG goals is to them from an investing standpoint?
It certainly is important, and everyone's talking about it, as you said. I think at the end of the day, though, you have to have an investable asset, right, or investable product and technology. So I think they're looking for the marriage of the two, and anything that can provide that is really exciting. I think we are seeing, there's been lots of talk for many years about this double bottom line, the ability to actually create value, but also create this with the ESG aspect to it. And so I think they're looking for that double bottom line. I don't think anyone would invest in ESG just because it's an ESG investment. They really want to make sure that it's something that is enduring value for their, if they're institutional, for their investors and individual investors as well, right? So I don't think that the requirement to be a profitable, company that has a great product is been alleviated, but definitely doing it in a responsible manner. So I see they're looking for the companies that are able to thread that needle and provide both of those aspects.
And consistent with the theme of ESG, shareholder activism is obviously on the rise. How are you, as an executive and as a director, thinking about organizational complexity, the balance sheet, corporate governance, and all of these issues together?
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly coming to the forefront. We've seen lots of companies face that over the last year. I think for me, it is, I've always been in a space, at least for the last couple of decades, where we've been focused on the good parts of that, right? We were able to bring that to a company. So I think it creates a lot of opportunity. I think that anyone who's ahead of that and thinking about it ahead of time before there is any kind of movement is going to be more better situated to deal with it when that happens. And again, I do believe that there is, this double bottom line that if you start to think about it carefully, you can find in many cases. And so from the board perspective, it's definitely a lot of discussion, I think, that's going to happen. Again, most of the boards and the companies I'm involved with are already in that space. But I can see how very quickly that becomes a regular part of the conversation and a topic at every board meeting because it is so front and center for many investors these days. So I certainly have seen lots of incoming requests for people who are looking for, how do you bring and infuse that ESG perspective into a company. And I think that it'll continue over time. I think there might be actual standards around that companies will have to follow eventually. And certainly that will obviously require every board to set up and notice and start to think about it.
Yeah. And, despite, what appears to be a global conversation around gender diversity and inclusion, women are still vastly underrepresented, particularly in tech. So I would love to hear about your experiences, from your Google days to present, and how, you, in terms of leading Terawatt, are making diversity a priority.
So yeah, we have a lot of work to do in this space, in tech, in energy. Started off my career as an engineer. I was a banker. And certainly I would sometimes be the only woman, oftentimes be the only woman on the team. And I think that still persists today in many places. And so for me, it's something I think about a lot because I think that the diversity brings a better perspective and you actually have better results as a company. There's lots of statistics out there that say if you have 50% of the executives in your company that are women, you actually have better financial results. So there are some good statistics out there. I think one thing I've noticed now that I'm hiring very aggressively is that women like working for women. And so if you have women in the senior ranks, they're actually able to pull more diversity in. You hear lots of, it's really hard, there's no candidates out there. But the best thing I think that I realized was just by sitting here, we're attracting those types of candidates and diverse candidates. So that's something I think that's been um, really great to see. We're almost 50% women at Terawatt, which is pretty astounding given the field that we're in. It's still a very male-dominated field, but it is something that I think is incredibly important as I get more deeper into my career, that I spend more time working on. I sit on the board of an organization called RISE, which is the Women of Renewable Industries and Sustainable Energy. It's really important to continue to focus on those issues and pull people with you. We have to do that. No one else is going to do it for us.
Yeah. How has your experience as a director influenced you as a CEO?
I was a director before I was a CEO. So sitting on this side of the table, there's certainly a level of empathy that you could have that you might not have if you got sat in the seat. So certainly, I think it's helped me realize just there's a lot of things that happen inside of a company that you may not always have purview to. So that is a definite perspective that I've gained. I do think it's made me a better CEO. I've been able to be at the table for a couple of different entities and see how they've navigated various issues that have crept up or opportunities. And so I have that in my back pocket now, that set of experiences that I wouldn't have had. And it's really been valuable to actually have gone through that before I sat in the seat. So certainly that empathy, though, is something that I think you really don't realize what it is to sit in the seat until you do it.
And in that vein, you hear a lot about from folks who, hey, I would love to be on a board. How do I get on a board? How do I even put myself in a situation to be found, to find that underserved talent? So what sort of advice would you give to a young executive who is looking for his or her first board spot?
So starting on a nonprofit board is always a great place to start. You learn things about governance and rules of order and those basic things that you have for a board. It also helps build your network outside of your normal day-to-day work life. If it's a nonprofit board that somehow is affiliated with your workspace and the industry you're in, even better. So I think that's great. I think it's important to be in an area of industry or development expertise that's really in demand. Finance, legal, these are all things that boards are looking for on a constant basis. I do think that there is a new focus over the last couple of years, whether it's driven by some of the mandates that have been made from a regulatory perspective, to find more diverse candidates on boards. And I've seen different ways for people to come in. Sometimes it's as an advisor before they're a true board member. So there certainly are different paths there. But the most important thing is you got to raise your hand. No one's going to call on you if they don't know you're interested. So you certainly have to be brave enough to have those conversations and say to your network, hey, I'm interested in this. If you hear anything, let me know. And, ask them for a little frank feedback. What do you think I need to do to grow to be able to contribute to a board? And that might be, getting more in depth on finance or governance or, whatever the issues are that boards are teaching these days. ESG, is one of them. And so for people in our industry who have that experience, that certainly is attractive. So I think those are all great things, but I think the most important thing is really raising your hand. You have to actually say you want to do this.
If you don't ask, you don't get, right?
Exactly.
You look at so many emerging technologies. Like, what excites you in terms of like the next generation of decarbonization technologies? What excites you?
It's not really decarbonization related or specific, but it's something that I come across a lot in my role here at Terawatt, which is AI and my goodness, AV vehicles. I really think that's going to be a really huge impact on everything that we do and how our industry runs. We really live around the human cycle these days. And the minute that you can remove that from anything, it really can impact how things can run. The amount of infrastructure you need, when the infrastructure is needed. And so I think that's going to be one of the biggest impacts that we see, that no one has even really anticipated how much it can change how you operate throughout the day. When we see these autonomous companies, they're talking about, for charging, having way more degrees of freedom than a fleet that is focused around drivers that need to be changed out twice a day. And so the opportunities you have with where you put that charging, how that fleet runs, what types of jobs they can do, the utilization of those vehicles is really just a significant step change in how we operate today on something like a logistics basis. So I think that to me is the most exciting thing that I see.
And what are you doing when you're not operating things at Terawatt and sitting on the board? What else do you do for fun?
I have two small boys, and so I spend a lot of time chasing them. A lot of fun, a lot of sports activities and things like that. And yeah, that is that pretty much fills up my calendar these days.
Yeah. Well, I think with that, it's been great having you. Really enjoyed your insights. Wish you the best of success at Terawatt, and we'll keep on watching.
Thanks so much, Joanna.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neha.